Have you ever found yourself in the chaos of crowded public transport, surrounded by a crowd of strangers, each with their own fates and concerns? The experience of being compressed like sardines in a can, feeling the unmistakable aroma of sweat around you, can be, to say the least, unpleasant. Now imagine that in addition to all this discomfort, you are forced to listen to an annoying conversation, full of curses and disrespect. These moments, common in our daily lives, test our patience and serenity. The ancient Stoics had a deep insight into these situations. For them, irritation and frustration are not caused by people or the events themselves, but by the way we react to them. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught that it is not things that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. If faced with a rude person or an uncomfortable situation, we must ask ourselves, what is under my control? The answer at first is simple: our own thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflects on the inevitability of encountering difficult people. He suggests that rather than getting carried away by anger or frustration, we should remember that everyone, including ourselves, has their flaws. This perspective helps us develop compassion and patience, which are essential traits for maintaining inner peace in the midst of external chaos. In addition to the practice of indifference towards things we cannot control, if a co-worker is unpleasant, or if we encounter a noisy traveler, we can choose not to allow their actions to affect our emotional state. This practice is not a form of apathy, but rather an exercise in mental and emotional discipline. Another crucial point in Stoic philosophy is the understanding of human nature. Seneca, in his letters, often mentioned that expecting people to be perfect is a sure path to disappointment. Instead, we must accept that everyone is fighting their own internal battles, often unknown to us. This understanding can transform our reaction from irritation to empathy. To apply these principles in everyday life, we can start with small practices. When we find ourselves in an annoying situation, such as crowded public transport or a date with an unpleasant person, we can pause and take a deep breath. Ask yourself, does it really matter? How can I respond in a way that preserves my inner peace? Often, the simple change of perspective can transform the experience. When dealing with difficult people, we are actually training our own mind and spirit. Every unpleasant encounter is an opportunity to practice patience, understanding, and compassion. Rather than seeing these situations as insurmountable challenges, we can see them as exercises in strengthening our character and resilience. So the next time you find yourself amidst the chaos of public transportation or any other challenging situation, use these opportunities to grow and become the best version of yourself. After all, as Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Before continuing, have you ever wondered what it would be like to have access to the secrets of the great Stoic philosophers and apply this ancient wisdom to transform your life? If you're looking to develop resilience, inner peace, and a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you, then you're in the right place. On our channel, we take a deep dive into the teachings of legendary figures such as Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. Here we explore their timeless lessons and adapt them to the challenges of the modern world. From how to deal with difficult people to how to find tranquility in the midst of chaos, each video is a journey towards a fuller and more conscious life. By signing up, you join a community of people who are passionate about personal growth and ancient wisdom. Together, we share insights, discuss ideas, and support each other on this journey of self-knowledge and continuous improvement. The changing rooms? Let's go back a little bit in the past. After Epictetus was expelled from Rome, along with other philosophers, he found refuge in Nicopolis, a city in northern Greece, where he spent the last years of his life. There he founded a philosophical school that attracted several students, among them a brilliant young man named Arrian. Without Arrian's diligent documentation, it is possible that today we would not have access to the valuable teachings of Epictetus. Arrian compiled numerous lessons from his master, resulting in a book that preserves the essence of Stoic thought. Public baths, a common practice throughout the Roman Empire, were places of social gathering, based on the bathing culture of the ancient Greeks and widespread throughout the Mediterranean. For the Romans, baths were more than a simple act of hygiene. They were a meeting place, a place to exercise, relax, and socialize. Politicians used these spaces to gain popular support, and even the wealthiest who could afford private baths often preferred the communal experience of public baths. However, these locations were not free of problems. The diversity of people who frequented the public baths meant that it was inevitable to encounter undesirable behavior. People who stole things, who behaved as if the space was exclusively theirs, as well as pushing, screaming, and threats were part of the experience. Epictetus, aware of unchanging human nature and its difficulties, offered practical advice on how to deal with these situations. He taught his students to anticipate the nature of places and the activities they would perform. In public baths, for example, they should be prepared to encounter water being thrown, people pushing each other, abusive language, and other disturbances. Epictetus emphasized the importance of keeping the mind calm and in check, regardless of the environment. If you said to yourself, "Now I'm going to take a shower and keep my mind at peace," you'd be better prepared to deal with any inconveniences. This approach applies not only to public baths, but to all everyday activities. Consider public transportation, for example. Buses and trains rarely run flawlessly. There are delays, unpleasant, noisy, and sometimes antisocial passengers. The Stoic, as Epictetus taught, must anticipate these negative aspects and prepare his mind to face them with serenity. Before boarding a bus or train, acknowledge the possibility of delays and unpleasant interactions. During the trip, strive to keep your mind calm, accepting difficulties as a natural part of the experience. In this way, Epictetus teaches us that the key to dealing with difficult situations lies in mental preparation and acceptance of reality. Tranquility does not come from the absence of problems, but from the ability to face them with a serene and balanced mind. This is the true power of Stoic philosophy, to transform adversity into opportunities to grow and strengthen the soul, always maintaining inner peace, even in the midst of external chaos. So let us remember that life, with all its imperfections, is a constant training ground for the Stoic mind. Every obstacle, every difficult person, is an opportunity to practice patience, tolerance, and tranquility. As Epictetus teaches us, it is through the serene acceptance of the inevitable that we find true freedom and peace of mind. A heavy burden. Marcus Aurelius, considered one of the most important emperors at the time, is a figure who exemplifies the practical application of Stoic philosophy in the exercise of power. As emperor, he faced a sea of people on a daily basis, many of them difficult to deal with. Rude, demanding, unfair, disloyal. He had to come across all kinds. Being the most powerful man in the world brings with it a heavy load of responsibilities. Imagine the burden of having a vast empire depending on your decisions, while many around you envy your position and conspire to overthrow you. To find relief and guidance, Marcus Aurelius turned to a personal diary where he recorded his reflections. In these pages, he explored themes such as courage in times of adversity, the purpose of life, and especially how to deal with difficult people. One of the Stoic practices he adopted, and which later became known, is the praemeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is a matter of imagining in advance the difficulties that may arise, preparing the mind to face them with serenity. A striking example of his writing is about not being disturbed by people's unpleasant smells. Marcus Aurelius wrote something remarkable about it. Don't be bothered by the smells or bad smells of others. What's the use? With this mouth, with these armpits, they create humility. But they have brains, don't you understand? Can't figure out what the problem is? So you also have a brain. I'm happy for you. So use your logic to overcome their logic. Tell them. Make them understand that if they listen, you've solved the problem, no anger. What Marcus Aurelius was conveying with this reflection is the essence of Stoic control over our reactions. He understood that although he was emperor, he did not have absolute power over the actions and behaviors of others. True power lies in controlling our own responses to these actions. Even in the face of an unpleasant smell or rude conduct, we have the choice to maintain our inner peace. By pointing out a problem and explaining it clearly, we do our best, but we cannot guarantee that others will listen or change. Some people just don't care or aren't in a position to change their habits. In such cases, excessive worry is useless. If we can't change the behavior of others, we must focus on not letting it affect our internal balance. This Stoic approach is not limited to unpleasant smells. It applies to any difficult interaction. Think of a toxic work environment, chaotic traffic, or any situation where people can act in ways that annoy us. Marcus Aurelius's philosophy reminds us that the secret to dealing with these situations lies in our internal reaction. By keeping the mind calm and rational, we do not allow the behavior of others to disturb us. In this way, the teachings of Marcus Aurelius remain relevant. By premeditating evils and focusing on our own emotional control, we find a path to true inner peace. Difficult people. When we come across behaviors that we don't like in people, we often magnify them by putting them under a microscope. A classic example is the way we see our parents. Growing up, we tend to focus on their flaws and ignore their strengths. Yes, some parents make mistakes, don't handle criticism well, or are overly curious. These are the differences between us and them, and often these characteristics persist in our interactions, making it difficult to live together. Unfortunately, there is little we can do to change these behaviors, as the change must come from within themselves. However, Epictetus exhorts us not to abandon these people. In his Enchiridion, he shares a lesson rooted in tolerance, showing that all things, including humans, are more than their negative qualities. Epictetus talked to a student who was dealing with a brother who treated him unjustly, both himself and others. His advice was clear. There are two sides to everything. One you can deal with and the other you can't. If your brother is unjust and you try to control that injustice, you will only increase the conflict. Instead, remember that he grew up with you and treat him with kindness. This shift in perspective is crucial. In many situations, our personal experience shows that altering our viewpoint can be extremely helpful. Sometimes, when we are alone with our thoughts, we tend to exaggerate people's flaws, turning them into villains and creating internal conflicts. As Epictetus says, the glove becomes more important than the person who wears it. It helps to focus on the other side of the person, because they can be more than just an idiot, extravagant, or dramatic. The challenge is to find this balance. Some aspects of people can be difficult to accept, but by focusing on the positives, we can cultivate patience and understanding. However, it is important to recognize that some situations are so serious that we cannot handle them, even with the best of intentions. There are people whose toxicity is so great that it becomes unsustainable to keep them around. In these cases, it is prudent to keep our distance, protecting our mental and emotional health. By practicing this Stoic approach, we are not only dealing better with others, but also becoming stronger and more resilient individuals. Stoicism teaches us that by controlling our reactions and maintaining a balanced outlook, we can find peace in the midst of chaos. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reinforces this idea by reminding us that we cannot control others, only ourselves. Thus, when facing difficult behaviors, let us remember Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Focus on what's in your control, your reactions, your perceptions, and your behavior. By doing so, we can navigate the complexities of human relationships with grace and wisdom. Leave or stay. Imagine for a moment that you share your home with someone who constantly lights fires and creates a smokescreen. Initially, as long as the fire remains under control and the smoke is tolerable, there is not an urgent need to leave. But what happens when the smoke becomes suffocating and unbearable? To stay or to leave? Epictetus, in his valuable discourses, offers us a pertinent allegory about this situation. If someone smokes indoors and the smoke is bearable, we could tolerate it. But if that smoke becomes too much, the wisest decision is to leave. Epictetus leads us to reflect on our choices in the face of adverse circumstances, especially when we are in the presence of difficult people. It tells the story of a man who refused to eat at another's house because he couldn't stand his company. Epictetus concludes with a powerful lesson. Don't behave like someone who is overwhelmed, depressed, or who considers your situation miserable, because no one is forcing you to do that. It reminds us of our innate ability to choose. In life, we often encounter people whose behavior is toxic or narcissistic, causing emotional and mental discomfort. We can ask ourselves, is it possible to escape from these people? The answer is yes. We always have the option to walk through that door and never look back. The decision to leave, however, is not a simple act of escape, but an affirmation of our own dignity and freedom. Marcus Aurelius advises us to keep our mind calm and free from the disturbance of others. He says, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not correct, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth, by which no one has ever been hurt." This search for truth includes the truth about ourselves and the relationships we have. If someone in our life contributes more to our agitation than to our peace, we need to reevaluate that presence. The philosopher Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, emphasizes the importance of maintaining our inner serenity, even when faced with outer chaos. He writes, "The man who suffers before he is needed suffers more than necessary." Staying in a toxic situation, waiting for things to change on their own, is unnecessary suffering. Instead, we must act with courage and wisdom, making decisions that preserve our mental and emotional health. As we reflect on the words of Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca, we are led to understand that our tranquility and freedom are precious treasures. We must not allow the smoke of toxic relationships to suffocate us. We must be vigilant in protecting our peace, and sometimes that means having the courage to close a door and move on. Therefore, when we are faced with the decision to stay or leave, let us remember that we have the power of choice. We are not prisoners of the circumstances or actions of others. The freedom to act for our well-being is always in our hands. And so, as we choose to leave that smoke-filled house, we choose clarity, health, and most of all, our own happiness. We've all faced situations at work where we've dealt with difficult colleagues or bosses. Imagine a corporate environment where you have to interact daily with a person who is constantly negative, critical, and disrespectful. This type of behavior can easily undermine your spirit and hinder your productivity. Let's think about Helena, a dedicated professional who works in a large company. Helena is a calm and hard-working person, but there is a colleague, Fred, who is always complaining, being rude to others, and creating a toxic environment in the office. Fred is never satisfied with anything, criticizes all decisions, and disrespects the limits of his colleagues, constantly interrupting with sarcastic comments. Helena, tired of this situation, began to reflect on how she could better deal with Fred without letting him affect her mental well-being. He remembered the teachings of Seneca, who said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Helena decided that she needed to prepare herself mentally to deal with Fred more effectively. She began practicing premeditatio malorum, a Stoic technique that involves imagining the possible challenges and difficulties she might face so that she won't be caught off guard when they occur. Every day before going to work, Helena mentally prepared herself for Fred's behaviors. She visualized situations in which he might be critical or rude, and thought about how he would respond calmly and rationally. In addition, Helena remembered the words of Epictetus. "It's not the things that disturb us, but our assessment of them." She decided that instead of being shaken by Fred's comments, she would focus on her own reaction and maintain her composure. When Fred began to complain or criticize, Helena took a deep breath and responded calmly, without getting emotionally involved. Over time, Helena realized that this change in attitude began to make a significant difference. Fred was still the same, but she was no longer affected by his attitudes. Stoic philosophy helped her understand that while she couldn't change Fred, She could control her own reaction and maintain her inner peace. Helena also began to see Fred from a new perspective. She came to see Fred as a person who was probably also struggling with his own inner demons. Instead of seeing it as just a problem, he began to practice empathy, trying to understand the reasons behind his behavior. This approach not only improved Helena's life at work, but also began to influence other colleagues. When they saw how she dealt with Fred in a calm and rational way, they began to adopt similar attitudes. The environment in the office gradually improved, with more people practicing patience and empathy. In the end, Helena learned that by applying the principles of Stoicism, she was able to transform a difficult situation into an opportunity for personal growth. This experience showed that while we cannot control the behavior of others, we can always control our reactions and find peace in the midst of chaos. People who hurt. Imagine for a moment the pain we feel when someone hurts us. If you've ever faced a betrayal or an insult, you may have been tempted to seek revenge. The idea of getting revenge may seem like a natural way to seek justice, a way to make the other person pay for the harm they have caused us. However, Stoic philosophy offers a profound and transformative perspective on the futility of revenge and the true nature of evil. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers of antiquity, offers a view that defies our natural inclination to retaliate. He invites us to reflect on what constitutes true evil and how we should respond to it. According to Epictetus, revenge is not only unnecessary but also harmful to ourselves. He teaches us to distinguish between true evil and the personal offenses we receive. Epictetus states, "True evil is someone's immorality, not the harm you have suffered. For him, the evil is not in the suffering you experience, but in the corruption of the virtue of the person who caused you the pain." When someone lies to you or steals from you, they are actually hurting themselves more than they are hurting you. Immorality and lack of virtue are the real penalties she faces. What happens to you is just a reflection of your own inner flaws. The real evil is lack of virtue, says Epictetus, and vengeance does no more than add another layer of impurity to what is already corrupted. The idea that revenge brings some kind of satisfaction is at best a passing illusion. As the philosopher Seneca observes in his letters to Lucilius, revenge is a way of blinding oneself to what really matters. It keeps us in a state of violence and resentment, without ever bringing true peace. The desire to repay a bad received often ends up consuming us, keeping us trapped in the cycle of anger and resentment that we seek to overcome. Instead of seeking revenge, Epictetus suggests a healthier and more virtuous approach. Never put yourself on the level of others. When someone wrongs us, our response should be guided by our own dignity and virtue, not by a desire to give back. He teaches us to maintain inner serenity and not to allow the actions of others to define us. Do not allow the actions of others to interfere with the peace of your own mind, advises Epictetus. Revenge is a futile and ineffectual desire. The pain we want to inflict on others is out of our control, as it depends on their reaction to our actions. True power lies in our ability to respond with virtue and wisdom, regardless of the offenses we receive. As Marcus Aurelius writes in his Meditations, the best way to get revenge on someone is not to become like them. When someone wrongs us, we have the choice to respond in kind or to seek a higher path. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius remind us that true strength lies in our ability to act with virtue, regardless of the behavior of others. Revenge is an illusion that takes us away from our true nature and our highest goals. Therefore, when facing pain caused by others, ask yourself, what does revenge really offer me? If the immorality of the one who offended you is the true punishment for that person, what is the purpose of extending that pain to myself? Instead of seeking revenge, seek inner peace and virtue. Remember the words of Epictetus, our inner peace should not depend on the actions of others, but rather on our own virtue. Therefore, revenge may seem like a tempting response to the injustices we suffer, but it is a path that leads us away from true peace and virtue. Instead of lowering ourselves to the level of those who harm us, we must seek our own dignity and inner serenity. Stoic philosophy teaches us that by maintaining our integrity, we can find a higher and truer form of justice. Have you ever stopped to reflect on the impact of ancient wisdom on your life today? In a world full of distractions and challenges, we often look for answers in places where they are not. But what if I told you that the lessons of philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius can help you find the serenity and clarity you're looking for? If you're looking for ways to improve your life, if you're tired of feeling like you're always chasing after a success that never comes, or if you just want to better understand how the principles of Stoic philosophy can be applied to your daily life, this is the place for you. I'll leave 2 more videos on the side that will help you dive even deeper into the Stoic teachings that can transform your life.